Yep.
My uncle was. House come along.
We just got the stamped engineer. So now the bottom foot, I'm hoping we get
You
the
sound like you're.
foundation. in. We may have to do blankets on it.
Donations aren't that. I either should reach out. Oh, good. That's a good place.
Yeah, the way you know where our lot is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most of the excavations are.
Yeah, no, in fact, I think your contractors have.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
There's a green on mine.
It does if you.
Test.
Testing. Yes.
Test.
There we go.
Yeah. You just hold it.
One, two, just hold it for a second.
Then let it go. Hold it till it turns green.
Wait a minute.
David, what's it this?
Just press it. Just press it. You don't have to hold it. There you go.
Just a little firmer press than you think.
Until the first of the year. Well, they can keep operating.
Yeah, no, I know
June
that. It's funny.
30th of
Mark and I were looking at
2023,
two lots.
but those that are in limbo are still in limbo.
So application.
An application that's
Just not the right time.
not been completed
I've looked at.
before the moratorium went into effect. They're still in limbo land. Those are the lawsuits I'm worried about. So there's more to follow.
Oh my gosh.
You'll see shortly. All right. Pardon me? Oh, yeah, and here, we had a major negotiations to try to find a solution that would.
Okay. Good morning. We'll get started.
They didn't like it.
Who do we have in the audience? Okay. We have Mr. Weatherford connected in on Zoom. He is on vacation. So I will ask for a roll call for the record. So if you can state your name and say you're here.
Born here.
Good here.
McCracken here.
Gamelki here.
Perry here.
Mijares here.
Neil here.
Anderson here.
And Chairman Perry, before we go to the Pledge of Allegiance, if we could have H and H promoted. H and H is on a borrowed, that's Arden. He's on a borrowed computer and he just needs to be promoted.
Okay. Max, just take care of it.
Thank you.
Are you here, Arden?
His microphone
His
is muted,
microphone's off.
but he is now on camera.
Okay. And he texted and said he sees us, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Good, you want to lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will attempt to streamline the meeting as much as possible, as I have our FDIC friends in town for the break. So, okay.
With that in mind, then Bourne moves to approve the minutes of October 2022 and November 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Bourne. Do we have a second?
Neil will second.
Second from Mr. Neal. First from Mr. Bourne. We will call for the question.
Bourne, yes.
Yes.
McCracken, yes.
Gamelki, yes.
Perry, yes.
Mijares, yes.
Neil, yes.
Anderson, yes.
Thank you.
Weatherford, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherford. Treasurer's report.
Okay, we have a couple of invoices. We have one invoice that we need approval for Rebecca Allen's admin work, $200 for the month of November. we have our annual loan payment to the city for $115,000. And we also have our October legal expenses at $1,699. Those are the three that we have this month.
Are there any questions on any of the invoices? Okay, if none, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Bourne moves to approve giving authority to two board officers to approve the usual and customary expenses that are in the budget to be ratified at this moment.
Well, let's do that next.
Oh,
Let's-
okay.
What we want, what we
That's the-
need to do is approve the invoices, and then we'll discuss the other.
I'm getting too fast.
Yep. Slow down a little. You're not in that big
Okay,
a hurry.
I gotta go too.
Okay. So we'll entertain a motion to approve the three invoices as presented.
Bourne so moves to approve those
Neil
doing
seconds.
stages.
Mr. Neal seconds. And we will call for the question.
Bourne, yes.
Good, yes.
McCracken, yes.
Gamelki, yes.
Perry, yes.
Miharis, yes.
Neil, yes.
Anderson, yes.
Okay,
Weatherford, yes.
thank you, Mr. Weatherford. Now for part B, and I want to give a little context. So we get these invoices in, and then our practice has been to hold them until the next month's meeting, which probably for the attorney, it's okay. I think it's problematic for Mrs. Allen. I don't think it's fair. So what this motion is basically asking is that if we have invoices, and typically it's the attorney fees, the admin fees, those are the two primary ones that we're going to see, that if it's usual and customary and already accounted for in the budget, that two of the officers have the ability, starting with Treasurer Anderson, to go ahead and authorize that, because the city, they do their accounts payable every Wednesday. So if we don't get this to them today, they won't process it tomorrow, and then they have to wait yet another week. And I just think that's not good best practice. So what this basically allows is two officers to go ahead and sign, and then what would happen then is in January, we would bring the invoices, they would have already been approved and paid, and then the board sees them and ratifies them. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Does anyone have any concerns with that process or that thought? It's not unusual. It still has internal controls. Any thoughts?
We had discussions on, I guess that was Sunday. And I know that you have discussed with the treasurer. I think it's a very good idea. We're all business people. So you like, the cash flow is important. We should treat our admin and the attorney the same way. So just
Agree.
for the public comment.
So maybe someone besides Mr. Bourne and Mr. Neal. So I framed a motion that I think would work, but you're free to make any motion you want.
Who would be the two people?
Any of the four officers. It starts with the treasurer, Rebecca. Most likely it's me, since I'm working everything with everything. But it could be yourself. It could be Mr. Neal. So but it has to be an officer of the board. Two officers of the two. Yeah. So you hear a motion.
I motion to approve giving authority to two board member officers to approve usual and customary expenses that are in the budget to be ratified at the next meeting.
I second McCracken.
Okay, first by Mrs. Anderson, second by Mr. McCracken. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the question.
Bourne, yes.
Good, yes.
McCracken, yes.
Gamelki, yes.
Perry, yes.
Miharis, yes.
Neil, yes.
Anderson, yes.
Weatherford, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherford.
So to be clear, it'll be you and Rebecca or any of the other board members that are present, or how-
Officers.
any of the officers.
So it either has to be yourself, Mr. Neal, myself, or Rebecca.
But most likely it'll be you and Rebecca.
Right.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see Mr. Taylor here, but I'll go ahead and bring this up because I think we need to kind of discuss it and put it to bed one way or the other. I don't think we could put it to bed today. And so the question is that Mr. Taylor, who owns the Human Bean and the car wash, the automatic car wash by the Human Bean, did a TIF agreement with the DDA, and several things we've discovered in this process. In his belief, based on all the meetings, notes he got, even an email from Mary Jo, even though I don't see it as signed. It was his belief that he was going to get TIF reimbursement based on both real property as well as personal property. And why this is relevant is personal property on the car wash itself, the equipment is the business, and it's a pretty high expense. And so it seems reasonable that they would have had those discussions. I've included the actual executed contract that we could find. And also Mr. Neal discovered in our kind of meeting on Sunday that there is a section of it on page 43 that, and I do have extra copies if someone. Thank you. You could hand out whoever wants. Page 43, which is a certificate of eligible cost, which needs to be filled out after the project's done. It probably should have been done a couple of years ago. So he's going to work with us to get that done. And there are some write-ins on page 33. It was written in property tax initialed by Mr. Taylor, and Mary Jo Larson, it appears. Anyway, the point is that he believes that it included both personal and real based on all his conversations, discussions, attendance of meetings. And I believe that I've probably spent about 4 hours digging into this. As I've communicated before, our electronic records are very difficult to parse through. They're not very organized, and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that's reality. I think we need to look at this issue. I haven't found any evidence in file that there's clarity one way or the other. But I think we need to do our best to kind of gather as much information, and it's on him to do that as well. I believe we probably should also do an executive summary to our attorney saying what's going on and see what he says. And then I wanted to turn to Mr. Bourne and Mr. Good to see if you have any recollections of those discussions at the previous boards with respect to when he was presenting, in particular with the car wash. He believed that it was pretty clear that it was the reimbursement was going to be based on real property and personal property because of the nature of the business.
Chairman, may I offer some different words instead of real and personally? The two words are public improvements versus private improvements. Those are the two terms.
Well, in the contract, but with respect to taxing, it's either on real property or personal property.
But the TIF
Yes.
is based on public improvements is in the document.
Yeah, this is a different one because as you recall, there was a significant amount of work that needed to be done over there that was also a public improvement.
Correct.
To the drainage coming across the highway. So do you guys have any recollection? That was years ago, so I'm not going to hold you to anything. So it's okay if you don't.
Bourne will kind of mention two things. One, I reflect on it really as being only on public improvements, which he did a substantial amount of extra work on public improvements, such as burying the electrical lines, putting in streets and sidewalks where maybe he didn't have to, relieving drainage issues and making that certainly far more desirable. So as far as personal property goes, I don't recall ever, getting involved in that.
Okay.
Now, point number two, I have a commercial building, Colorado Springs. In it is also a metal fabricating business. And we have lasers in there and welding and press brake bending stuff. So we got quite a bit of material in there that's a personal property. In working with El Paso County, what I learned is that the first 50,000 is exempt. So it would be only any, and I suspect the same was probably true in Teller County, though I'm starting to get out into the woo-woo land and not absolutely sure because I haven't verified that. But it would be one thing to look at. That if that is true, then the amount of personal property tax that would be collected would be very small.
So what I think I'm hearing is, let's verify with the county what they're doing. I think the equipment cost was upwards of 200,000 plus.
Sure.
So that delta, even if we exempt the first 50, could be 150,000. So,
And then there's a small assessment to that. Yeah, at least that's true in El Paso County.
okay,
Yeah.
well, so we'll do some research on that in
Yeah,
addition to
to see,
digging.
yeah.
Yeah, I think our intent should be as a board to do as much homework as we can based on what's available to us. Have a little bit of input from the attorney and then hopefully just give a clear message
Sure.
back to Mr. Taylor what we think and then move on.
Then I suppose we'd have to start to factor into the amount of dollars if it was to flow that way based upon depreciation.
Yeah, there's
And
more.
all of these have become very complex and that's why we don't want to be there. Plus, it's public works that we're looking at.
All right, in this contract, correct.
Yeah,
Yes, Mr. Good.
You know, my memory is my strong suit by any means, but I do recall that Brad Spivey was in here representing, and he was very instrumental in the process because of the loan agreements. So he might be a good resource to reflect back on. Another good resource would be Paul Benedetti, the attorney that actually, excuse me, should have signed off on this. And obviously Tanner Coy. Tanner was very instrumental in putting this stuff together. So, and he's just down the street. We'd be glad to,
Yeah, all the information so far came from Mary Jo, nothing from Tanner, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
No, I agree with, I didn't even know Brad had come in, but Paul Benedetti, I think the contract's the contract. From my perspective,
yeah.
it's very clear. I don't see the personal
They
property
could help.
aspect.
help, clarify.
Yeah, we could see what Tanner says. We do not have access to previous boards' emails because they went away and anyway. Okay, so I guess all I'm asking for is that we wanted to put the board on notice that Mr. Taylor has brought this up and we owe it to him, owe it to ourselves to kind of dig in and make sure we come to some conclusion that makes sense, hopefully, and hopefully that it makes sense to him. So do I have any objections to continuing to try to understand the scenario and situation and then report back to the board, hopefully next month with the next set of findings? Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we also this month got a request from AJ's Pizza on asking, I think, for a TIF agreement or deal. We did provide them the TIF application, just as a matter of course that I think Mr. Bourne and Ms. Carrot put together for the DDA board previously. I don't think this board has looked at it, but it's what we have in file as our board. So I believe are you gentlemen, if you would like to come up to the podium. And I think for today, our goal is to listen to your requests in terms of what you're wanting to accomplish. My perspective is I think you're almost done with the build.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah. Good morning. So please just kind of state your names and then I guess communicate what you're thinking in terms of the request.
My name is Steve Melvick.
Mike. Yeah.
My name is Steve Melvick, and it's my son, Aaron Melvick,
Mhm.
AJ, if you will, for the pizzeria. The company name is M&M Pizza, Melvick and Melvick. He's the one that really knows the business. I pretty much provide back office type of work. I'm also the taster over there, which kind of shows from time to time. My background was, I come from the Chicagoland area where I thought, pizza was a big deal. Some 40 years or so ago, moved out to Colorado, and about 20 years ago up to Woodland Park. And I always felt like, it was hard to find a good pizza in Colorado. His background is pizza, going through school and learned the business from the time he could drive a car and deliver pizza, and worked his way through college, Colorado University grad. I think spent 5 years or so in the banking business before the opportunity came up to take over what was Johanna's Pizza here. So that's just a quick background. I won't take a lot of your time there.
Been partners for a long time.
Handshake partnerships worked out pretty good.
So we're looking at some improvements we did, more or less to the, I'm sorry, can you guys hear me okay? More or less to the city of Woodland Park. To give you a little more background, we've been here for about 10 years. We wanted to pay it forward to Woodland Park and our customers for 10 years of success. We really owe it to our customers, and this was our best way of sitting back with the family and figured this would be the best way to more or less do it. In the lines of some TIF ideas here, we didn't want to shortchange the location. We wanted to go above and beyond, and we actually went a little bit more above and beyond than we were planning, but it's kind of what you guys are probably looking for, more or less. Everything from drainage to sidewalks to landscaping, and we're also very hopeful to do a lot more. I got a little more saving I gotta do, but I guess the best way to approach this is there any questions I can answer, or what are you guys kind of seeking out of this process that we could kind of bring to the surface for you?
Well, I've had more time to think about it. So I have a list, but I'm going to open it up to the rest of the board members for questions. Mr. Neal.
Yeah, I'll start with the question that I asked Tony on Sunday when we were kind of going over the agenda. You're coming in after the fact, which means every single business could come back to us and ask for a TIF now after the fact, which means it could destroy our budget. What, as both a city council member and a DDA board member, what makes you unique that we would give you a TIF in your mind different from every other business that could come back and ask?
Absolutely, and I fully understand that. I'm kind of a novice. I'll be honest with you, I was unaware that this even existed. This is a really wonderful benefit. I had no knowledge of this going forward. We thought we were going to have to do this out of pocket. And that was the way we were proceeding with this. So my best response to that is I didn't know that this existed. However, you do bring up a really good point. The other businesses and so forth, they could come in after the fact. I would hope that my inexperience doesn't reflect on them. I'm stuck in pizza land all the time. I'm not too aware of these policies. Actually, my father, he's the one that's good at this type of stuff.
Right, and it was probably my lack of foresight to even approach the city on this. When we started, if you recall what the Pizza Hut building looked like, we actually thought that our best bet was to get moved over there out of a rental situation and maybe just take off the old Pizza Hut roof and paint it up and just move on in and start doing business there. But Aaron and Amber, his wife, had a little different take on things. And we had some experience working with Dave Langley, architect. And we contacted him to see what his thoughts were in terms of doing improvements. Started out as a remodel in a sense and ended up pretty much a demolition project and rebuilding, as they took on the idea of, they looked at it as a blighted property. And when you look at Main Street here, the way Woodland Park has been developing, and they wanted to go ahead and extend to the downtown area a much nicer project. So it's only been recently that this came to the surface. And when we looked at our budget on building and the additional improvements that we put into it, it looked like some relief that we might be able to find with the TIF against the inflationary cost to do the development as we did with an architectural improvement. And as I looked through the application, I thought that there were several points of what we've already done and are attempting to do or would like to do that fit into the TIF. Knowing that we were late to the party, so to speak, and we're kind of out of order, but given the nature and the magnitude of the additions that we put in, we thought we'd come and ask if we could get some consideration and some help. We've pretty much blown the budget, and there were other things that he and Amber wanted to do there, but we just had to say, well, you know, let's see. Typically in a restaurant business, you should not exceed 4% of your gross in your real estate or location costs. And now we've pushed that into what I personally consider the danger zone here. But I think we're going to be just fine stopping where we are right now. The financial relief that the TIF could support would probably be a much welcomed relief on our end, and probably also apply towards the continuation of business as we anticipated happening there.
We want to do more. We want to do more. I got a little saving. Good question. Did we answer that thoroughly?
Yes, you did, by simply acknowledging you were unaware of it. I would only ask, when you present your TIF request final, that you may break down what you originally went into, what your costs were going to be originally, and then if you had an incremental improvement above and beyond what you originally came and asked permission and submitted all your paperwork to the city, so that, you know, I can consider that at least. I think need to have some sort of a process or a guide for the board to judge how do we roll it retroactively. Otherwise, we could be without money very quickly.
So, yeah, other comments or thoughts? I want to get everyone else's out before I go through my.
Yeah, I would say that part of the main problem, other than, you know, understanding and advertising what the DDA offers in the community, which it's a subset of the community that understands what we do. I think one of the important objectives that you mentioned, Steve, is working, you know, revitalizing a somewhat blighted property. And I think that rings truer with the board and with everybody else than talking about not understanding that the DDA was available. So that's really the point, and one of our missions here at the DDA is to work on those aspects. So just for disclosure for the board, I was a civil engineer to design their detention pond on the site. So I don't see that as a real conflict. It was a small part of the project that I came in late on.
Thank you for that. And then Jerry, you were raising your hand.
Well, I thought I had a comment, but No, you guys, that building is beautiful. It's a welcome.
I've been living there.
Yeah, no, it's much appreciated that you put the money behind all that to do that. So we're very welcoming of that. Typically a TIF is offered as kind of an incentive, whether you can the project proceed or not, may depend on that TIF. And also we're here, in my opinion anyway, to bring desirable businesses that will benefit the community, which you guys obviously do. But it's, you already did it, but my personal opinion is that we find some way to help you out on this. It's a little out of character, but nonetheless, you guys, I think would be good for the community, and we should help you.
We also want to do more. We're not really done with that location. Our goal is to really do something special there, and with landscaping and other additional things, we have dreams to really just make that just pop, in that little area of town. So as time goes on, we're able to save more and so forth. We hope to put even more funds into that property and really just make where we are now get operational, but we're not done yet. We have dreams to continue that.
Ms. Anderson.
I was just going to agree with my fellow board member here that I appreciate the fact that you took a empty abandoned building and turned it into something really lovely. And I think that that's worth something to our board and to our city. So I think there should be some consideration taken in for that fact.
There's a small dynamic here, in all honesty. People at Woodland Park made us who we are. I mean, we're just a little pizzeria over there at the shopping center. But everybody recommended, folks come our way, and that's the real reasons for our success. We wanted to get back to this. This is all just the best way my family and I could say thank you. We were sitting back, we could open more locations. We just really want to pay it forward to the folks that made us great.
Mr. Board.
Better check this one.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Where I'm sitting on it too is that in the state statutes, it directs us to look at either active blighting process or an existing blight definition of a blight. And I agree that the building that you removed probably fits into that category. So at least in that cost sphere, I could certainly find a desirable position, to see what we could do, at least on the blighted or the mitigation of a blighted situation.
I think the building is beautiful. I've worked with Dave Langley before. He's fun to work with, incredibly talented. And I know how the budgets can go up because they do so on almost every project we do. So understand that. Glad you came to us, really glad you came to us and at least reached out wherever you're at, in your process. It's always worth asking, right? So we appreciate what you're doing in the community, and it's made a large improvement on Main Street. So thank you.
Mr. Inoki.
I guess my only concern would be, I agree it's a beautiful building. I saw it as the Pizza Hut before. And I saw you left the ovens and kind of left a few walls there, but nothing else. The ovens are, I wondered, because I wondered about the ovens, because otherwise you're stuck making them how Pizza Hut makes them, and then you can't make them the way you want to.
The price coming on over.
Good, good. But I agree that it opens up the can of worms for other businesses to come back to us. I agree, but I think we should look into it and see what we can do, if we can do anything. I agree. And then possibly, you say you have some things that you're doing now into the future. Maybe that's the part that we help. I don't know, maybe you submit that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that, what that looks like, but that would be a possibility as well. If we can't go back and say, well, let's help on the part they've already done, can we say, well, can we help on the parts they still want to do? I don't know. I don't know what the legal is on that, but I don't want to open this up for a can of worms of a bunch of, because I could say, I put 100 grand into a building here. I didn't ask for any TIF money. Can I come back and ask? You know what I mean? I mean, that's where we're at with that kind of, we just need to check ourselves and be,
So, yeah, obviously, recently I was made aware of this and I invited you to come in and be part of the agenda. So I've had a little bit more time to think about it than the rest of the board members. So I'm just going to throw out some thoughts, concepts, my initial research for us to kind of think about. And then I think we did give you an application. I still think we need to review the application to make sure that Mr. Bourne, we don't want to make any adjustments in 2022 or 2023. We're almost there. But here's kind of where I'm coming from. With respect to a retro deal, we already do have kind of a precedent, not a precedent, and that is back in 2010-ish with Jan's Fitness. I believe the DDA board gave her a personal property TIF deal on her equipment and curbs, which is now the Colorado Gear Lab. And so I think there is a precedent there possibly. The other thing is question on, you mentioned drainage, sidewalks, landscaping, detention pond. I'm assuming those were all city requirements that popped up with your renovation, which is normal. You go in thinking you're just gonna do some improvements to the building and then the whole property comes into play, correct?
That is very correct. That caught us off guard, but we understand.
Yeah, it's
And
just,
that-
it's part of the
also,
process.
That occurred when we went from the idea of just using the
Existing.
existing facility as is to the renovation, redevelopment.
Changes the whole equation. You have to do all kinds of other stuff. So literally you would have had, yeah, literally you would have had to go in and just paint it. And maybe a roof, maybe, to stay
Yeah.
under that threshold. Yeah, so that's good. Frankly, based on everything I've seen heard so far, if you would have come in at the genesis of you would have checked all the boxes in terms of the DDA's mission, what we're here for, what the TIF's supposed to be applied to. So, but I'm gonna throw out maybe a different thought process to Mr. Neal, and I don't know who's right, frankly. So the challenge here is prior to you doing renovations, we have to establish the basis of the value, right? So let's say it's $5. And then after renovation, it's $20. And so the TIF is actually calculated on that 20 minus 5. So you improve the property 15. And so if the county sets that new basis, the delta between the two tax bases is what the TIF can be calculated on. So from a budget perspective, if it's sitting there as a blighted building with worth $200,000, it's you probably paid much more, but yeah, 400,000. And now because of the renovations, the upgrades, the property upgrades, it may be 800,000. So the TIF monies they would be eligible for potentially is the delta between the two. And the theory is that we're now collecting mills on that additional $400,000 in value. And that's the amount that's available for a tax increment financing deal. Does that make sense? So
Correct.
the property, yeah. So from a budget perspective, we're worried about retro deals. If the cost basis is established properly, the theory is that it shouldn't affect our budget. Because basically, we're just giving them some monies back for taxes that we wouldn't have had anyway, if that makes sense.
In theory, in the perfect world, that is correct,
I know.
but that's not the real world.
Right.
Because we're paying off a debt.
No, I understand. Okay, I understand. So, yeah, but we still get the mills to pay off the debt up to the original basis value. That's the reality. The only deal they could get is on the delta. So we still have monies to apply towards debt for that, from that property based on its original basis. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Completely.
So I think we need to look at that a little further, look at the math. And so is it possible that other applicants will come forward? Yes. And I would propose that we come up with how are we going to handle this situation and what's the checklist? And if another property comes and makes the case and it checks all the boxes and we can make it justify from a cost basis, from a protect the district basis, protect the city basis with respect to paying our debt, then I think we should consider it, in my opinion. Like I said, it meets all the check boxes. Blighted property. Everyone agrees that it improved. Everyone in town that I've talked to, we're just wondering when it's opening, agrees that it has improved the downtown corridor, which was the whole purpose of the district of the DDA in the first place. So complete the application. We have to figure out how to, and I would use the word conservatively, figure out the cost basis and the delta. And really, the only thing that would be eligible is that delta, a percentage of the taxes coming back to you as a tax rebate, if you will, on taxes that wouldn't have been paid because the property wasn't improved. That makes sense. So, so I'm hearing that the board's open to looking at this. I think it's incumbent upon the board to think about if another one comes, making sure that we're protected. That's our first duty. So it sounds like we want to participate, but we need to make sure, and to Mr. Neal's point, make sure there's no long-term damage to our ability to repay debt or those kind of things. So,
Chair, one other, Chairman Perry.
yeah, Mr. Good first.
Just, we need to be real cognizant of the, excuse me, the fire department and things of that nature. We might have Mr. Lambert knocking on our door again. And that's a consideration if everybody in town is collecting this, who's paying for everything. So it's just a consideration we need to approach it with.
Mr. Neal.
I agree, Jerry. I would ask the board, when we think about it, because I'm not against it, but we have to have a fair and repeatable standard in which we apply to this business that we would apply to anybody else that could retroactively. And maybe as you're putting together your TIF, that would help me as a city council member and a DDA, if you could separate what you did on the private improvement versus what your costs were for public improvement, because there could be a justification in my mind that some public improvement that goes to a greater good, it would resonate with my constituents, I think.
Yes, Mr. Maharis.
So a couple of thoughts. Yeah, obviously, perfect scenario, we would have seen this project in design development stage. But this isn't necessarily the case of them coming after the fact. They're still actively in construction, not occupying the building. And so maybe that's something we could consider as a cutoff for future projects, that if you're actively pursuing the project, it still seems somewhat current.
Which would be a fair.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking on that. The other aspect we were getting at this a little bit is trying to give you guys some guidelines of what we do. I think Rusty's idea of separation of public improvements, because that seems to be a precedent we've set in the past to move towards public improvements. But I mean, it's also the other goal of this board to improve downtown with new structures and remove, you know, blighted structures. And so I think we need to somehow come up with some, you know, is that 10% of the improvement, 20% of the improvement? Some of those discussions need to happen to set some guidelines.
Concur, Mr. Bourne.
To further where I commented earlier, I could certainly look at the public improvement component, that being the sidewalks that are installed. That's a public improvement that benefits everybody. Improvements in the draining system, including the retention pond. And then a little bit in that area too, and there may be some requirements that I'm not familiar with, but reflecting on what Jerry mentioned, enhanced fire suppression systems within the building might be an interesting thing to look at from a public safety standpoint, to encourage, you know, whatever goes on in that area. Now, I recognize some areas it's required of some sort, but to make sure that we have a public safety component to it also.
Well, yeah, I don't, whatever the city requires there and the fire district requires.
Yeah.
I don't want to get us to get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think what else, if they went above and beyond, because I've done buildings that did not require sprinkler systems where the owner determined to put it in, that would be a benefit to Tyler.
Yeah.
So if it's above and beyond, there's a discussion there. I think your use, you guys are sprinkled, correct? Or not sprinkled?
No, we had Tyler aid in the design.
Mhm.
Tyler, the fire chief, he's become good friends with him in most of the design of the, that was back in the likely stages.
Right.
So we took that as a extreme. We really want to make sure we're safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, really happy Mr. Neal brought this up because I run my business this way and I've hopefully started setting the tone for this board that everything we do has to be fair, has to be consistent. We have to be able to explain it. If we can't meet those three criteria, then we need to rethink it, right? I think there's a lot of valid things that we can establish. So I guess what I would say is, based on time, if the board is open, I think Rusty, I think it would make sense for you because you're looking at it from two lenses. I'm willing to jump in and basically parse out this entire list and try to come up with a initial structure for our board to consider. And we'll send that out to you, have you come back with any other additional inputs. So I guess I'm saying we're willing to put in, we've already started fleshing out a lot of it here. This may not be a quick process. We'll see where we get to in the January meeting, but it sounds like we're going to put an effort to coming up with a fair, consistent, explainable process that we can repeat if we do get other retro requests, and frankly, to make sure that any future requests are addressed. And then I want to remind the board that when I ran for this role, one of my position statements was any future TIF deals would exclude the monies that would go to the fire district. So if we calculate the delta and then we calculate how much the fire district would have gotten, the fire district gets their money on any future deal and we exclude that from the delta money. Does that make sense? I mean, that was my position that I ran on. I got elected, so I'm assuming we're still in consensus on that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. And again, it would have been a lot easier probably at the beginning, maybe not. We're still learning as a board on, and appreciate everyone's input here. It's very helpful. It's a worthwhile effort to move forward and put energy into. So thank you.
Appreciate you hearing our request.
Yep.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Enterprise zone, yeah, there's some opportunity for them to get some money, so, especially for what they did. Okay, we're gonna move to financial reports, which I think, Rebecca, we have some thrown in there, and I guess if you have questions, we're basically on target with our budget, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, we're basically, you can see the budget in your packet. We are on budget. As of right.
Are there any questions on anything in the packet? Okay, and I'd also like to make the comment, you'll see a spreadsheet at the end, and this is basically Matrix engineering expenses back to the beginning in 2001. And I would say that some of those charges are for other projects. And some of the Woodland Station expense items are easy to parse, some of them aren't. So I just provided the entire spreadsheet. And basically, when I gave out that number for the total expense at the last meeting, a citizen told me I needed to correct it and say that there are some services in here that weren't related to Woodland Station. So it was less than reported last month. But this is the exact detail. Okay, with respect to legal, an update on the contract process that we wanted to close in August. Basically what happened is we took the Lot 1 Woodland Hardware Development and Acquisition Agreement that was done back in the day on Woodland Station as our template. The Tava Group, I think, spent $5,000 on their attorney to kind of complete it as best as possible. We then took that to the DDA attorney, and I have to agree with his assessment that the original contract was clear as mud, convoluted, hard to understand. Whenever you have that situation, it's not a good situation. The contract should be as clear as possible. It's not always possible to get there, but what our DDA attorney recommended was that we get a standard Colorado form commercial real estate contract agreement, and then we add an addendum, because the addendum is the piece that this board should be most interested in the sense that, if we're going to sell this property to the Tava Group, what are the protections that we need to have in that contract for the DDA board, the city of Woodland Park, and the citizens of Woodland Park. And so we've been working on aspects of that, because I agree with our attorney that the standard form and an addendum with clearly delineated requirements and potential penalties, those kind of things, should be the contract, not a very convoluted acquisition development agreement. So do we have any, does that make sense on its face that that's the way we're proceeding with our attorney?
It makes me much more comfortable.
Yeah, that original contract, once the Tava Group's attorney submitted it, I finally actually read it in depth for the first time in 10 years. And I read a lot of contracts, and I was scratching my head going, what are they really saying here? So we're going to proceed on that part. I've asked the Tava Group to give us an update of some things that are floating through their head that we're going to push to our attorney. So I'll let them speak to that when they get up. Taylor Enterprises, again, if we gather enough information, it would be a very simple couple of questions to our attorney on, here's what we think we're seeing. Do you have anything to weigh in on in terms of protecting the DDA in this process? And so I assume I have a consensus that it's okay to engage the attorney on that too, to make sure we get that issue cleared up, hopefully. Yeah, we'll do as much work as possible, because my theory with attorneys is the more work you do for them, the less expense you're going to incur. Chair report number 6, VCUP meeting with state. I was invited into a meeting with two representatives from Matrix Engineering, representatives from the Tava Group, and then I don't remember the gentleman from the state's name. It was an interesting name, but I couldn't remember. Fonda. And I was invited to attend that meeting on the VCUP because unfortunately, the DDA board let this expire a few years ago. And I think 18 is when it expired. It's one of those things where the VCUP could have, every year you could keep kind of renewing it and keep it kind of alive. But the DDA board, we let it expire. So we have to go back and kind of do another VCUP. The original quote, and I say original because there's a different one, was about 10,000, a little bit over 10,000. As seller of the property, in the real world, it's appropriate that we participate in that expense. So I sat in, I didn't comment. And what my takeaways were that Mr. Fonda from the state clearly was a seasoned state employee, that he's not worried about his job. He's pretty secure. So I think he was pretty direct and open and honest. He genuinely seemed interested in helping as much as he could on this project, which was good to hear. Matrix Engineering led the discussion, and of course it came down to get the VCUP in compliance and moving forward again. The gentleman from the state and Matrix Engineering basically in real time sat there and discussed where, in addition to the drill holes that are already on the property, where it was testing for the benzene flume, the state wants additional drill holes. And Matrix Engineering and the state went back and forth to discuss where those drill holes would be to satisfy state requirements. And in my head, as I'm listening, I'm just going cha-ching, cha-ching. I'm just hearing dollar signs every time they're opening their mouths. But you know, it's clear it has to be done. There's some theories that because we have decomposed granite up here, at this juncture, the benzene flume may be washed away. Or it may be down to the southern part of the property where we're planning on, or they're planning on putting residential. And that's kind of important to know. The other side effect is that obviously in the big picture for Tava, it's probably in the best interest of Mr. Weatherford to go ahead and drill his holes at the same time. But obviously that has to be his expense. And Mr. Weatherford, of course, can weigh in if he wants. And so, but there probably is economies of scale. If he does his holes in addition to the VCUP update, it's going to be less expensive for him in the big picture. But he probably should do it if he's going to be part of the overall. But all we're talking about, all the DDA cares about, is the 6.3 acres and to make sure that's proper. So I'll let you address that too, because you showed me an invoice right before we convened. And so we haven't, the DDA doesn't have official notice yet of all this information, but we'll let you update us. The other thing, I'll let Mr. Gamelki talk about a fire department meeting he attended. I think councilperson Case originated that meeting with the city. But before that, in your packet on page 55, and we've talked about this before, and we were in consensus when we were talking to both applicants prior to Tava being chosen. It was clear that there was going to be a residential element to this, and discussion about removing the requirement that residential will only be on upper floors, not on the first floor. And so we have completed an application to the city. This has to go through planning and city council. So this is just an application. And basically, it's an overlay zone text amendment. And so I put together the application on page 59. In yellow, you will see the language that we're proposing be struck from that as a text amendment, and basically removing that requirement. And then on the next couple of pages, we're showing that it's not inconsistent with the comprehensive plan that was just done. there's nothing in the comprehensive plan that goes against this request for the text amendment. So we'll see what planning commission says and we'll see what city council says. But I just wanted to let you know that that is being submitted. Ken, do we have any objection to being it's submitted? It's here, signed, ready to be handed to Karen at the city. So
Just a piece of information to the board. We should be thankful to the planning department and the city manager. Normally, there would be a $994 fee for this application to be submitted. Because we are a quasi city entity, the city went ahead and waived that fee. So there is no fee to the DDA for submitting the application.
and since it was my first application ever, I want to give thanks to Karen, our planning director, for giving some coaching and guidance in terms of how to properly do it. Appreciate that very much. We'll see if it goes through the process. Is that something we've had kind of consensus on that point before, but probably now that we have an application, I guess I would entertain a motion to approve formally submitting the application, removing that requirement from the overlay district.
Well, I'll make the motion to submit it as prepared, but I do want a little bit of comment still.
Bourne seconds.
Okay, now discussion.
I just want to make the board aware that this is purely a parallel action in my mind. We still have the V cup that will essentially establish the safety factor of having residents on the ground floor. That's got to be the primary consideration. So that'll be working at the same time. But to try to help with the process, this waiver, since there's no cost, is a parallel action that may come to become a dead end. If the V cup says it's just not safe, there's still
Correct.
benzene down there.
Right. Yeah. So that's the beauty of the, kind of the tone we've set here is that obviously the V cup will drive if there's any safety mitigation factors in it. Like to your point, it may kill that, which would affect the development. And they probably can speak because I've asked them that question and they have plan for if that occurs somewhere down the line. So you're right, it is a parallel process. So we have a first and a second, any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to just point out for the record, I'm not in favor of this.
Okay.
I never have. And, you made a comment a meeting or two ago that I had voted for housing projects over there, that the one that I voted for was much more inclusive. It all didn't start that way. At one time, Woodland Station was supposed to be a commercial development. And just to clarify, that's where I think it should be. And I'm not in favor of changing, putting residential on ground level. There's a reason it was done. And this testing is very important, but just keep in mind the liability that we could be opening up. So
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? I guess I'll make a final comment. Yeah, my comments for a couple of meetings ago were a recognition that both applicants prior to choosing Tava communicated in their opinion, that residential needed to be part of the project based on 2022.
initially,
Huh?
not initially.
And if you go back and look at the record of how this came into the overlay district requirements is, at that time, the DDA had a vision of a Vail Village with commercial on all the ground floors and residential above and a cute village. Again, that hasn't materialized. So the environmental hazards will dictate how this flows and goes. And the mitigation efforts, if any, are required, but definitely hear you. Okay, any other comments, questions? We will call for the question.
Bourne, yes.
Good, no.
McCracken, yes.
Gemelke, yes.
Perry, yes.
Mijares recuse.
Neil, yes.
Anderson, yes.
Mr. Weatherford,
Weatherford recuse.
thank you.
I'll recuse in this case.
Thank you. Okay. So, Mr. Gemelke, can you give us a quick update on your meeting?
I can give you a brief update. So Kelly Case, Tyler Lambert, Michael Lawson, John Nomes, and myself were there. Basically, the fire department is looking for more funds. They're wanting a ladder truck, not a new ladder truck. They would like to buy a used ladder truck, but they need a newer ladder truck than they have now. And they are also looking for a training tower. And I thought it was at first I thought it was a fire tower so they could see the fires, but no, it's a training tower so that they can literally teach their firefighters how to fight fires. It's I guess it's you just start fires in it. I don't know how they work, but it's a reusable structure. It's a tower that can be set up in different ways so they can learn how to fight fires. So they were just wondering if we had any ideas, the community had any ideas. They approached us and city council, which is why Kelly was there. They're looking for some funds. I did share with them the fact that we openly have discussed that we might make some changes to the TIF and that would open them up for some of that money. Possibility. I didn't say we were going to do it. I just, because we had talked about it as a board. And so that's pretty much where we're at. We do have another meeting this month and we will see where that goes.
Yeah, I think what's interesting out of that, if you go look at the fire department strategic plan, I think around page 58, it discusses the fire tower. I think what we've discussed again is any TIFs we do from here forward, exclude those fire district monies, so they get those back. I think that's something we could do as part of our process to be fair, consistent, explainable. And we also talked about once we effect the sale of the Woodland Station property, there may be a one-time kind of payment that we can redirect to the fire department. Again, that's making sure that we're protected from a financial perspective, but also with the concurrence of the board, of course. So we'll have that discussion maybe early in 2023.
I did not discuss that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm just saying that we've talked about that before. And so I think it's fair to say, based on what I've heard from all the board members, that the DDA board recognizes that any building in the district that is taken away, they're asked to defend the buildings in our district, and yet we're taking away the funds from them to do that. So it was probably something that should have been thought about a long time ago, but we have a chance to address it here shortly, I think. And moving forward, we're obviously not going to go back and retro it, but I think we have the consensus of the board that we're all on board with anything we could do to assist the fire department. Is that fair?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Gemelke, and we'll look forward to your next report. I know that was kind of the first salvo, but okay. Woodland Station update. Yes, ma'am.
Did you guys have a first and second on the Sammy just was concerned there wasn't a vote on the first and second on the floor, but I think you did vote on the.
We did.
There was a first.
There was a first and second, yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So Derek and I here, and Ron Lord, our architect, is on Zoom. Ryan, good morning. Sir. Okay, quick update on what's going on with.
Hello.
Hey, Ryan. Quick update on what we worked on in the last month. There's a lot going on with our project. We had another smart meeting with the city of Woodland Park staff. We showed them what we were proposing for our phase one in the development. And we got a lot of feedback. And there was a couple of main action points that came out of that. But it was very productive. myself and David was there, Derek, you were there, Ryan, his architect team, they were all there. So we've got a lot of energy that we're bringing to the process with the city to get to entitlement so that we can start construction. We did determine the phase one that we want to pursue, which is just a very top portion, the north portion of the overall, what we've called lot 2 for so long, the commercial portion of our plan. We got into the big cut process more, which Chairman Perry has brought to you to explain that we all know that there's a plume there. And what the state, Fonda, is wanting is more data. Where is the plume now? Has it begun to diminish? Has it spread? Where are the boundaries of it? So that's a lot of what's required from the code right now. It's more data to provide to the state so that they can give a recommendation on the process. We worked on the contract and the addendum. This is great news that we can take an existing, you read the contract was presented back in July. We can take that, add an addendum, have some exhibits. Everyone can see it. It does simplify it greatly. And we'll put that in there in the contract. We'll provide that to y'all and then you can give it to Marcus. For his review. We are wanting to put in a closing date of January 31st, 2023, on or before. The sooner we can do it, the better. We are ready to proceed with that. I'm not sure if there's a process of approval with the city council on that. So we'll have to get on that agenda to get that approved. So probably sometime in January. Because you have your next city council meeting next Thursday.
No, January 5th is our next council meeting.
Well, there you go. Okay. Yeah, so it'll be January 31st on before. I think that's it. Do you have any questions?
One thing I forgot in discussing the VCUP discussion is, tell me his name again with the state.
Fonda.
Fonda. I need to see it.
It's Greek last name. I'm not even trying.
That's okay. He did mention he has a budget within his department for projects like this. And he did mention that he just got that budget approved and there are tax credits available to the developer if you meet certain time deadlines. And so, and they've already, I think Matrix has already provided kind of it's crazy how simple the application appears. But so that's, I think, a possible good development for Tava. Yeah, so I think you're right. I think as soon as you get that your proposed addendum out, we'll provide it to Marcus. His job is to help the DDA frame the contract and those addendum items in such a way that we are protecting the DDA, the city, the citizens, and finding balance with Tava. So hopefully we can see if he can get that to us and ready for the meeting in January. Okay. Mr. Gamel.
You mentioned, do we have a proposal about the VCUP, how much that's gonna cost? You didn't mention that.
A lot of money.
Yeah, I'll bet.
They'll only give a range. Upwards of 80,000, I believe.
About 85,000.
They said probably even out to 75, but conditions still are yet to be determined when they show that.
Are you guys willing to move forward regardless of the VCUP before the VCUP results come back? Are you still going to?
Yeah.
Okay,
And that includes parcels that are not in the city.
So that,
All those parcels to the west.
that amount would include getting his parcels done as well. Yeah, so just to be clear, that's private property. And so that would be excluded from any discussions we have with you. Okay.
and who is, I guess I already probably know the answer. Who's paying for that? Are we paying for that? Or are you guys helping us? What is the process with that?
We're gonna cut a check to get it done and then sort through all the aftermath.
Okay,
later.
Yeah,
Okay.
so when it was a little bit over 10,000, we'd agreed to split the cost with them because and it's whatever the cost, it's usually usual and customary. As the property seller, I'm not going to sign off on any contract without knowing what's happening with the environmental. To Jerry's point,
Mhm.
there's huge liability there. So it's not atypical in the real world. Now, I don't know about the government world, but that cost is negotiated and typically split in most commercial contracts. If it's 80 and it's 15 minus for Ardens, then we're talking 60-ish. So it'd be 30,000 to the DDA if we agree to that versus 5. Big difference. But I would argue that even if Tava walks away, the DDA needs to step up and get that B cup not only redone, but also in compliance and understood before we even attempt to sell. So I appreciate Tava's willingness to step up and keep the process going while we determine what we need to do to make it fair, consistent, and explainable. So is that fair?
Yep.
Okay. Any comments, questions, thoughts? Yes, sir.
Separate line of thought, because I did bring up the fact that the city council would be weighing in on the approval process. I was not aware of that. I was going by the development and disposition agreements that are in our files, that the city staff had a very small role to play in any plan that's brought forward. In going through the waiver preparation process, the city planner did provide a Colorado revised statute that I want to kind of read so that you understand, and you need to be aware of the timelines. It's CRS 31-25-807,
I
which
could send it to you.
yeah, which says an authority shall not, meaning the DDA, shall not actually undertake a development project for a plan of development area unless the governing body by resolution has first approved the plan of development which applies to such development project. So this is a state requirement that the city council has to vote on. And there's another step involved. Part B is prior to its approval of a plan of development, the governing body shall submit such plan to the planning board of the municipality. So the plan has got to go to the planning commission first for theirs, and it takes two meetings. So there's a month there. City council is another month. So when you're doing your backwards planning, this is not great news, but we better be aware of the requirements so everything stays legal.
Yeah.
She did send it to us that there is a state requirement for.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. The application still meets the timeline to get in the agenda through January.
Correct.
And I see this as two separate things we're discussing. So first is the sales contract. I still believe, at the end of the day, the city council is responsible for this board. And I think it's in the best interest of the community that city council agree to the contract. That's different. Now, with respect to the entitlement processes, if you go back and look at when I made my speech for becoming chair, one of the other things I truly believe is that as a DDA board, we do not have, even though we have developers and builders and a lot of talent on this board, my position was, and it's consistent with what you just said, that Tava is going to go through the normal process. They have to get approved through a commission or through the planning commission and get to the city council with respect to the development project. And so from a DDA perspective, I also said that I would prefer that the entire board is the architectural design committee, but I would argue that most of that responsibility we place on the paid professional staff at the city. And then if we see something that we want to weigh in, we can, but we let the process go like any other project that a developer would have to do. So really we have the contract, which is what they're talking about by the end of January. Entitlements is down the road.
Correct. These are parallel
Yeah.
activities, not sequential.
Yes. Yeah.
But I do want to point out that you have another path that we've just uncovered that we need to start working on that path as well.
Yeah.
So that we can keep you on that pace that you're looking for.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we look forward to seeing your addendum recommendations. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Ron, are you catching all that? I assume you heard what Chairman Neal was talking, or sorry, Councilman Neal was saying.
Yes.
Just one other quick comment about the removal of the requirement for commercial ground floor residential above. It's not that we are only going to do residential on the ground floor. We may do that kind of mixed use. We just don't want the requirement that it absolutely has to have residential above commercial. That's the only thing.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay, any other questions for the Kava group? Okay, thank you. And I understand, Derek, you're heading to Barcelona? Flight, safe flight. Okay. Mr. Weatherford, any comments from your perspective? I need to keep reminding myself that you're sitting on your boat.
Nope, no comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any agenda items that the board wishes to discuss that weren't on the agenda? Okay, and audience participation. Anyone that wants to? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This is not on. Thank you. I just wanted to say that in regards to the fire meetings, the fire department, after the full amendment to the PUD for the Charis Bible College, we as a council kind of mentioned that there might be other opportunities for funding for the fire department. And so I as the mayor and she has been invited to these meetings as well, kind of brought together a group of stakeholders, DDA, all the different districts, including the county, who could not join us at the first meeting, fire department, city, and all of us to get together more as a brainstorming opportunity to help them create maybe some ideas they had thought of to expand their revenues and see if we could help them as a group find a way to help their budget. So I just wanted to clarify that it's really more of a brainstorming session than it is a entertaining offers or asking for a revenue return to them. So we hope that that's successful and helps them. And I thank John for being with us last time and look forward to our next meeting.
Yeah, and I guess my 2 cents worth, because I did go through all the materials that Chief Lambert sent. And I've paid attention to the fire district since like 2012 when they had certain issues back then. A couple of things that stood out is, and I'm glad you brought this forward, I think aside from the funding element, I believe that the focus is what you just said, is that let's get our entire community, which includes all the paid and unpaid fire districts within our county, and then maybe even down Green Mountain Falls, because Cascade usually participates in anything that happens up here. And that is an opportunity to pull together from a leadership perspective and work together to come up with and share scarce resources that all the fire departments are dealing with. I think it helps that the new emergency management person was a former chief up there that ran the fire out in Cripple Creek this summer. So I applaud your efforts to get that going. And John is committed to being a representative and eyes and ears for the DDA and for us to help any way we can.
Excellent. We'll include you in those invitations. So we do have a poll out to try and find a convenient date for everyone for our next meeting. Hopefully it's going to be this month, as John mentioned, but yeah, we're just trying to help and come at it as a community and not just piecemeal. So thank you for participating and for the time.
The other one.
Other one.
Another book that.
It's just a quick question.
I turned it off, turn the switch.
Now, there we go. Did you get a dollar amount for the fire truck, the ladder truck and the training tower? They didn't throw out a number.
Not a specific number, no.
Okay.
And that actually is what stood out to me. I think the training, again, is like around page 58. I think they have further work to do to delineate those expenses and then in my world, kind of cost justify the benefit, do a benefit analysis of the expense versus the benefit. I don't think they've done that yet. As far as we know, they may have. Yes, sir.
I actually had met with the fire chief and asked him those questions. A brand new ladder truck is $1 million. A used one that they currently had, they got at a bargain price of $100,000. So that sets the range. It's expensive.
It's very expensive. Yes. So I see Miss Kitty and Deanne leaving. So have a great week. Merry Christmas. Thank you. Ms. Hill, do you have any questions? Okay, anyone else in the audience? Okay, I think hearing no additional audience participation, I'd taken a motion to adjourn.
Bourne moves to adjourn.
We all second it.
Yeah, everyone second.
Everyone second.
They are adjourned. Thank you.